Product cost may be distorted when a single plant-wide factory overhead rate is used. However, product cost may also be distorted when multiple production department factory overhead rates are used. Activity-based costing further reduces the possibility of product cost distortions. The activity-based costing method provides an alternative approach for allocating factory overhead that uses multiple factory overhead rates based on different activities. These activities are the types of work or actions involved in a manufacturing or service processes. For example, the assembly, inspection, and engineering design functions are activities that might be used to allocate overhead. Under activity-based costing, factory overhead costs are initially budgeted for activities, sometimes called activity cost pools, such as machine usage, inspections, moving, production setups, and engineering activities. In contrast, when multiple production department factory overhead rates are used, factory overhead costs are first accounted for in production departments. The budgeted activity costs are assigned to products using factory overhead rates for each activity. These rates are called activity rates because they are related to activities. Ay, in activity-based costing, the factory cost per unit is computed as follows. Activity-based usage multiplied by activity rate divided by total units of estimated production, or total factory overhead cost divided by total units of estimated production. Let us now illustrate the activity-based costing method through the illustration for Ruiz Company. Let us assume that the following activities had been identified for production of snowmobiles and riding mowers: fabrication, assembly, setup, quality control inspection, engineering changes. Fabrication and assembly are now identified as activities rather than departments. The budgeted cost for each activity is as follows. For fabrication, we have $530,000. For assembly, $70,000. Setup, $480,000. Quality control inspections, $312,000. Engineering changes, $208,000, for a total of $1.6 million. To illustrate the activity-based usage for each department and each product, the following will be used. Estimated units of total production, 1,000 units for snowmobile and 1,000 units for riding mower. Estimated setups for snowmobile is 100 setups and riding mower 20 setups. Quality control inspection, 100 inspections for snowmobile and 4 inspection for riding mower. Estimated engineering change orders is 12 change orders for snowmobile and 4 change orders for riding mower. The number of direct labor hours used by each product is 10,000 hours. In order to compute for the total direct labor hours for fabrication department, assembly department, the following will be used. For snowmobile, it requires 8 hours for fabrication department and 2 hours for assembly department, multiplied by the number of units production with the number of 1,000 units for each department, for a total of fabrication department of 8,000 hours and 2,000 hours for assembly department, for a total direct labor hours for snowmobile of 10,000 hours. While for riding mower, it requires 2 hours for fabrication department and 8 hours for assembly department, multiplied by the number of production units. So we have for fabrication department 2,000 hours and assembly department 8,000 hours, for a total of 10,000 hours. Since we have identified and computed for our activity-based usage, we can now compute our activity rate, which is dividing the budgeted activity cost pool by the total activity-based usage. So for fabrication, the cost of 530,000 is divided by 10,000 direct labor hours with an activity rate of $53. For assembly, 70,000 divided by 10,000 direct labor hours is $7 per direct labor hour. For setup, 480,000 divided by 120 setups is equal to $4,000 per setup. $312 for quality control inspection divided by 104 inspection for a total of $3,000 per inspection. Engineering changes, $208,000 divided by 16 engineering changes with a total of $13,000 per engineering change order. Since we already identified our activity rate, we can now compute by allocating the product cost to each product. We can compute by multiplying activity-based usage times activity rate is equals to activity cost. For snowmobile, the following are the activity costs as computed. Fabrication 424,000, assembly 14,000, setup 400,000, quality control inspection 300,000, engineering changes 156,000, with a total factory overhead cost of $1,294,000. But for riding mower, fabrication 106,000, assembly 56,000, setup 80,000, quality control inspection 12,000, and engineering changes of 52,000, with a total of $306,000. In order to compute for the factory overhead cost per unit, we will divide the total factory overhead cost by the budgeted units of production, which is 1,000 units for each product. So for snowmobile, we have 1,2,994,000 divided by 1,000 is equals to 1,294 factory overhead cost per unit. But for riding mower, we have $306,000 divided by 1,000. We have $306 factory overhead cost per unit. To illustrate, activity-based costing method produces different factory overhead cost per unit than the multiple department factory overhead rate method. This difference is caused by how the $100 cost of setup, quality control, and engineering change activities are allocated. Snowmobiles and riding mowers did not consume these activities in proportion to direct labor hours as compared on how the multiple production department rates was computed. That is, each snowmobile consumed a larger portion of the setup, quality control inspection, and engineering change activities. As a result, activity-based costing allocated more of the cost of these activities to the snowmobile. Only under the activity-based approach were these differences reflected in the factory overhead cost allocation and thus in the product cost. As a result, the snowmobile will be underpriced if it is used using the single plant-wide rate, and the riding mower will be overpriced because its factory overhead cost will be overstated by $494. If Ruiz uses the activity-based costing method, its product cost will be more accurate. Generally accepted accounting principles require that selling and administrative expenses be reported as period expenses on the income statement. However, selling and administrative expenses may be allocated to products for managerial decision-making. For example, selling and administrative expenses may be allocated for analyzing product profitability. One method of allocating selling and administrative expenses to the products is based on sales volumes. However, products may consume activities in ways that are unrelated to their sales volumes. When this occurs, activity-based costing may be a more accurate method of allocation. On the other hand, service companies need to determine the cost of their services so that they can make pricing, promoting, and other decisions. The use of single and multiple department overhead rates methods may lead to distortions similar to those of manufacturing firms. Thus, many service companies use activity-based costing for determining the cost of services. Service costs are determined by multiplying activity rates by the amount of activity-based quantities consumed by the customer using that service offering. Thank you, and that will be all for my report today. If you have any questions, you can add a topic discussion in our forum.